Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Your magical kiss take me just so far. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Don't leave me like this, dangling from a star. Set me all aflame and it's so pleasing. It sure would be a shame if you were only teasing. So my love, before I go, turn the lights way down low and talk to me. Talk to me, talk to me. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Don McKeag Show, the August 7th, I believe. I don't know what day it is. It goes so fast. 2014, imagine. We're into the 8th month of 2014. Anyway, we are happy to have you join us here. We're on just about every Thursday from 6 till 7. And we are a show that encourages, as talk radio, my other show. Some of you, of course, may hopefully listen on Saturdays at WXTK on the Cape from 11 till 1 on Saturdays. But our number here is up on the screen, and we would love to hear you call. You're not limited to topics, although I would be very happy to have you contribute to what I opine about on a regular basis. I am taking this show extremely serious because I'm taking the future of this country extremely serious. After living as many years as I have, done as many things as I have done, good and bad, and observed the results of the different times of my life and the reasons that I perceive for the results being different. I feel it's not only up to me, but to others like me to forget about the retirement, forget about just sitting at home, playing with the grandchildren, playing golf, but this is serious business now, and we are in a very big crisis mode, not only worldwide, but more importantly, morally, financially, and just communicatively in this country. Some of the happiest years of my life were as a teacher. I'm a graduate of Weymouth High School. I went on to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Got a wonderful education in both places. I then worked on my master's at Boston University. I did not complete it, but I have been a teacher. I went into teaching after business. I was a business management major and a minor in English. But after I was in business with my father for a while, I decided I'd like to go into teaching. And I went back, got my teacher certification, and became a teacher. And all the other things I've done in my life, some might call them worthwhile or I won't say exemplary, but I was successful in the restaurant business. But there has never been a time. I taught for 13 years, almost 14. And there's never been a time when I haven't missed it and missed the young people. It's an absolutely terrific way for a person to spend their life. You have to love the kids, though, and of course, like anything else, you have to be a good teacher. You have to have that certain something that you don't get in a textbook. I believe I had that, and I say that with no intention of boasting, but it's just something you can't learn. But I did what I did, and the biggest reason for me leaving teaching was the administrative attitude changes and basically me. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do something else. With that being said, I've always, in other words, had this, I guess, some part of my persona where I like to convey knowledge to people. I like to convey the experiences I've had that I think might be helpful. And in America of today, it's very difficult to do that in some cases, especially when you're a conservative or when you are talking in ways that are not necessarily complementary to certain groups, certain individuals. But I have always, and I have to constantly remind others that it is about principles, not personalities. The other side, the left side, seems to always make things personal. And I'm not saying conservatives don't. By the way, this isn't Democrat, Republican. This is strictly conservative versus liberal. I find that the proof is in the pudding. You look at the moral core of this country, not the same as the 50s. Who's been in charge? Who's been responsible? The liberal establishment. And if you're happy with everything, and some are because they are basically into materialism, material things. This country was founded on Christian Judeo principles. The core of this country's beginning came from the 10 Commandments and a recognition of the 7 deadly sins. I'm going to keep repeating and reminding all of us there. And the other thing that influenced me, other than my good friend Ken Bukes and his wife Karen, is this is the seat of where it all happened. This is Plymouth, Massachusetts, America's hometown. And it's important that we remember that. With that, I believe, comes a responsibility. In fact, an extended and strong responsibility from the residents and town fathers in the town of Plymouth to carry on what so many people just down the street from this studio gave. You walk through Plymouth and you'll see where the Pilgrims trod. And it, to me, is extremely spiritual. By the way, I want to compliment those that have watched the last couple of shows. Having been a businessman and oriented toward business and against government, I've been chastising Plymouth for not having that downtown waterfront area finished by now. And I do want to compliment who's ever in charge. I'd like to take credit for it, but I'm sure I had nothing to do with it. They have now got flowers and shrubs and mulch in the islands that around those circles that are down there on the waterfront. However, it's far from being done, and they are still in a position where they have to redirect traffic, affect the business community, but more importantly, affect those who've come from all over the world to see Plymouth. All over the world to see where the seeds were planted. And this is another reason why I chastise the priorities of today's educational system. They do not focus, in my humble opinion, enough on the basic reason that this country became great. We have our flaws. Every great culture has flaws, and every affluent society is flawed, once again, because the 7 deadly sins are with each and every one of us. Greed is the biggest detriment right now in the United States of America. It's in all of us anyway, but it is rampant in the politician, the business community, corporate business, the communication. Imagine the money that communications, that TV and all, it's laughable to me. We're sitting here doing this for nothing. We come in here for nothing. And yet we have people right now on the news that we're competing with that are making millions and then chastising those others who are making, certain others, mostly the business community. Very rarely do they chastise the government that's abusing their financial, we call it fiscal responsibility, on a daily basis. On a daily basis. And the trouble is we have so many truly good people of whatever party or no party, independents, who go in to office in some capacity only to be disgusted with their inability to change things, their inability to do anything really concrete. They drop out, and we're left with a rampant, greedy, self-centered government. And it's both parties. I'm going to keep harping on that, but I came across what I like to think when my time comes and when all of our time comes. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote a wonderful poem in the 1800s that says it all, that again, I don't think we stress enough. This should be mentioned in schools, churches, meetings, and it's called success. What is success? We have so many people striving for success. We have too many parents, I saw them in education, whose definition of success is to have their kids do better than they had. Now think about it if you fall into this category. Does that mean you didn't do well? Does that mean that they have to make millions to prove that you were a good parent? Does that mean they have to be well known, that they have to have done something spectacular, better than you did, for them to be successful? That's the message that too often is sent. I have seen parents do that. They're proud that their daughter is at Bryn Mawr or Smith or UNH. They're proud their son is at Harvard or Princeton or Yale or Bowdoin. But ask them whether the kid likes where they are. Ask them if they want to be where they are. And many, because I've done it with former students, many will grudgingly admit, you know, I'd rather have gone into the trades, but my father or my mother wanted me to do such and such, and college was essential. Now, I believe in college. I'm a college graduate, as I said. It's a wonderful experience, an experience that good students and people that have potential should certainly go to. But there are many. I've known kids that I grew up with. I've known students I've had. They went into the trades. They went into public service, police officers, firemen. They didn't get a college degree. They've done beautifully. They're pillars of their community. They're wonderful parents. And this has been a message that has been propagandized by the elite in the educational establishment for the same reason that government propagandizes itself, and that is that there's something special and that anyone that doesn't follow them is somehow less than. But this is the poem that I'd like to have you digest, and Kenny and I, we're going to put this up on the screen another time. But Ralph Waldo Emerson, this is what I would like to think my life might have been about. I want it to be. I hope it has been at least a high percentage of this. But just listen to this and digest it yourself and see how you measure up to this in your own mind. Maybe this is not what you consider success, but it's what I consider success. And I think it's the kind of success that makes a happy individual. That's the other thing. How many people are happy with what they are doing? I'll get into that a little later. Ralph Waldo Emerson, to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to win the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. I'd like to see this read in every church, every classroom, and on television newscasts. We are inundated with, you gotta have more, you gotta have this, you gotta, right from our little kids. But there's so much in this poem, 150 years old, that is so applicable to today. That's why we have the classics. That's why it's so important to teach these classics. I used to call them universals, and they are. They are never changing. When you talk about human beings in any country, in any era, 2,000 plus years ago, that will still apply in civilized society. So remember that there are answers when you get down about the world and when you get down about the things that are bothering you, and you're seeing it in your own families. The one I also read that it's part of me now, was spoken by Martin Luther. Martin Luther, again, the forming force of the Protestant revolution against the Catholic Church. Again, this is not anti-Catholic. This is what I mean about principles, not personalities. This is not pro-Protestantism. This is one man who was a devout priest in the Catholic Church himself, who saw the huge corruption and immorality at the top in his own church, and tried to change it, tried to get to the people who he thought would recognize the need for change. And when he had no success with this, he then took it upon himself and other priests, equally dismayed. Remember, Catholicism was the Christian religion at that time in Europe, and he made huge changes. One man. Here's what he said. Cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asked the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because his conscience tells him it is right. America's conscience has been attacked and is being undermined by people who follow the others. They are vain, they are greedy, they are thinking only of themselves. And that is what brings down every great society. It's not giving more money to the poor. This is another misconception. And it's politicians that are doing that right now with your money. You, Democrats, all of us. Not with their money. Isn't it ironic, those of us that were in business, or those of us now that have to live in a budget, no matter what job you have, that there's a big expenditure that has to be made for you to do your business. Your car breaks down when you're commuting to Boston. You're going to buy a new car. Do you get a raise? Do you get a raise after you buy the new car? Not that I know of. But a politician, the big shots that are out there winning votes by handing out your money, they build in a raise for themselves. They have a cost of living increase for themselves. They have health care systems that are not this Obamacare. You Democrats better remember that. Congress does not have the same universal, it's supposed to be, universal health care that you and I will have. And they will have lifetime health care after just serving just 2 terms. How's that for? Patting the deck for yourself. And yet we are voting for the same people over and over again in Massachusetts. Oh, I neglected to say, those that have listened know this, but I'm going to keep reminding people because I'm hoping we have new listeners all the time. There are, what, Kenny, 18 towns that we are able to be telecast to somewhere. But that being said, I am repeating myself, but I was a Democrat for years. I was a John F. Kennedy Democrat for years. So it's not like I was a Republican and I am criticizing Democrats because I've had that disagreement. But I was a conservative Democrat. People in Massachusetts conveniently forget, of course, the Boston Globe is guilty of this, because the Globe, of course, dictates politics, policy, and they've always been pro-Democrats and pro-established institutions. But I just couldn't stand it anymore. There's no place for a conservative Democrat in that party now, and I just, again, do not understand Democrats that cannot vote the people that are in there out. It doesn't mean you're a turncoat. It doesn't mean you're voting Republican. You are voting, hopefully, for the better person, for the best choice. What is wrong with that? How is that not what we should all be doing? But what I started to tell you is Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a Democrat also. But Ronald Reagan was a conservative who went through just what I went through. His statement was the same I made, and that was, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. It doesn't get any clearer than that. And it left me in so many different ways. And yet, the newspapers, the media today, they're supposed to be watchdogs. That's why we have a free press. We have a free press, not so that they can support one group, one particular philosophy, one particular, it's amazing to me how they get away with talking about having one religion and about Christianity having a monopoly. They have a monopoly. And that's okay with them, though. But Reagan won this state twice in his run for president. He even ran, I believe he won it in the primary when he was running against Nixon the second term. Now that required Democrats to vote for him. I was one of them. I was friendly with the Kennedys and I voted for Ronald Reagan. There are, in fact, they finally had to acknowledge Democrats for Reagan. And there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that voted for Ronald Reagan. Why? Because he spoke the old Democratic Party beliefs that I was a Democrat for. Now, again, this does not mean I'm insulting Democratic voters. I'm just chastising the way you would to children when the parents see them misbehave, and then see they get in trouble over and over and then wonder why. You know, repeating the same, in other words, electing the same people over and over and expecting a different result. It's not rational. So we have, I hope, Kenny, we have a number up there where we're not getting many callers, and I think a big part of it is this particular hour is difficult. It's the newscast. And even though I'm smarter than those that are on these other networks, I guess we're not going to get calls for a little bit.
Well, why don't you take a break of water? The phone number is 508-830-3971. And yes, we are seen in 17 different communities.
Name some of the communities, just for the heck of it, because I think the Plymouth and others.
Plymouth, Kingston,
Right.
Pembroke,
Right.
parts of Plimpton, not much.
Yeah, a little bit of Plimpton, a little pie.
Yeah, we're in Duxbury. We play, this was the shock to me, on FiOS we play in Essex.
Yeah, on FiOS, which is Verizon, right?
Yes, we're in
Yeah.
Essex, Georgetown. That blew me away when I heard that.
Yeah.
And we're also on in Rochester, Mattapoisett, Lakeville, parts of Middleborough. I'm missing something. That's not 17. But
No, well, that's all right. No, but I mean,
there are quite a few.
it's quite impressive, and I don't know again what our in talk radio, of course, Arbitron does, you know, the ratings, and they do polling and so forth. I don't know in PAC TV, we probably don't have any way of monitoring to see what we have for listeners. But by the way, too, if you'd like to, if those of you who are watching, Kenny's going to kill me if I haven't got it right here, and I don't seem to.
I'll go get it.
You'll get it. It's right here somewhere. But there are replays of this show that you can hopefully recommend to family members or to others that might be in that. Yeah, here it is, Kenny. It's Channel 13, hopefully, that you're watching, Comcast. And then if it's Verizon, it's FiOS Channel 43 that you're watching. But we will be re-airing this show on Monday at 11 p.m. if you're still up. But Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning is a good time. Wednesday at 1 p.m. So there's right after lunch or during lunch. So Monday at 11, and this is all the time. Every show we do will be recast on Monday at 11 p.m., Tuesday at 9 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 p.m. So let's get to some specifics. And again, hopefully maybe there's someone there that might. Please feel free to call. I not only enjoy it, but I'd like to think that I'm a good host, and I don't want you to be uncomfortable, and I'll field pros and cons. But it just, again, proof of the pudding. This governor we have, Deval Patrick, he showed his true beliefs the first term he had as governor. Now, again, Charlie Baker, was his opponent last time. Unfortunately, there was a third candidate who was tied into the state, and I believe hurt the Republican candidate more than the Democrats, because there were some that would not vote Republican anyway in Massachusetts, but they didn't like Patrick. So they voted for, now the name escapes me. That's how quick he disappeared. And then, of course, he got into trouble. He was a state, high official. But again, it is just amazing to me. Well, it isn't. It's just, it is what it is today about the bias of the press. Now, it's reported, but it's never taken as important as it should be. Deval Patrick, it's been in all the papers, spent $11.2 million renovating the corner office of the governor's residence. That's $2 million. First of all, there was a little bit of an outrage over the $9.2 million that he budgeted. It went $2.2 million over budget. You and I are paying for this, Democrats. Young people out there working. You people that are like me in a retired mode with children and grandchildren out there in the workforce, how can you tolerate this irresponsible fiscal behavior? But it'll be reported. The governor's defending it. It's not money out. There is no recourse. None. A businessman doesn't have that luxury. A businessman has to have a bottom line. I know, in my small way, I had to put in a $65,000 septic system into the last restaurant I owned. I was in the restaurant business on the Cape and in Carver. Now, do you think I gave the chef and me and everybody a raise after I put the $65,000 septic system in? But your towns, others, they build new schools, new fire stations, police stations, then give the employees raises. What's that all about, ladies and gentlemen? Huh? Don't get defensive about it. Is that right? Just for being employed by the town or by the state, on top of costs of living. We have town officials that get their, and we have our state reps and our state senators, they don't pay for their gas. Billy Bulger went in after getting $220 some odd thousand for his retirement, triple what it should have been based on what you and I pay, and that is we're based on Social Security contributions. He got the last 3 or 4 years of his salary, and that's how they came up with 200 and some odd thousand. Well, then he had the nerve, and again he was supported because he has so many people that owe him in corrupt Boston politics. He went in for housing credits that he hadn't taken. They have no shame. You see, there is no shame today in so many ways in this culture. And that's because the liberal philosophy is laissez-faire. Oh, just let it go. Live and let live. I believe in live and let live until it affects me and affects my children, my friends, my neighbors. That's a bunch of bull that anything goes. Look at the price we're paying for that philosophy. People say I blame liberals for everything, and that's because 90% of the problem is liberalism. They will never take any kind of responsibility for it. Those of you that are liberals that don't like it, sorry. And of course, there are extremes. I was liberal in terms of social programs when I was a Democrat. I still am. But I and you have a right to expect that the people in government running those social programs run them responsibly, run them with a bottom line. That's why we have budgets. This guy should be held accountable for being over budget. What's the sense in having a budget? We have to come up with people losing their homes, losing their jobs, and he's the same one that'll go out there and say about why employers aren't, providing more jobs, creating more jobs. He's been another incompetent. And you can't say anything because he's a man of color? Is that right? Huh? Equal treatment? Unless you screw up in your job or you're not doing it right, and then you play a race card? Not with me, you don't. You can't have it both ways. If you're a woman and you get elected and it gets tough and people criticize you, don't throw the tears at me and say the only reason you're being criticized is because you're a woman, or because you're gay, or because you're any other minority. If you want to jump into the pool, you better learn how to swim. But again, liberal newspapers don't follow that. That's our problem. So you have our phone number, 508-830-3974. 71. I haven't got my glasses on. Now, Kenny.
Yes, Don.
This is Ken Bukes. What's your attitude toward this expenditure by the governor?
I'm not very thrilled with it. He's very liberal spending my money. And I don't like it.
But are you happy that we can't do anything about it? I mean, what about our representatives and our state senators from, what do they do about it? You know, they're the ones. What about Therese Murray? That's who I'd like to call to task. But this is our Plymouth. She's head of the Treasury, and I mean, why don't the newspapers have her making a statement about this? Why wasn't she asked to make a statement when this first $9.2 million budget came in anyway for a renovation?
It'll be the same as it was the day you had her on the radio.
I know.
And you asked her a question.
Well, but I'm sorry. I never had a problem with her. Then again, she didn't like being asked a couple of questions that I asked her on the radio, which I found not offensive to me, but offensive to her position. That's what you're there for. I'm here. I'm here with a phone number, ladies and gentlemen, that you can call and hold me to task. I welcome it, because if I can't back up my beliefs with what I believe, and again, it's not about how you feel, ladies and gentlemen. It's about what you know. What have you experienced? What have your kids done that they know about? Never mind how they feel. That's the other liberal side that drives me crazy. It's all about feelings. No, we all have feelings. When it comes to important things like expenditures and social programs where young people's lives are at stake in how that program is run, then it isn't about feelings. It isn't about being kind with other people's money. And again, I resent this culture today, in this state especially, where if it's a Democrat, they get a pass. They reported in the Herald. I don't know what the Globe did. I refuse to buy the Globe. I won't. The Globe has been a problem for years. It is a biased newspaper. And by the way, then let's spin into today. They were talking about Elizabeth Warren. I mean, again, this is the female vote. The women get upset when I talk about it, but it's the truth. Hillary Clinton, if she becomes president, it will be a majority of pressure coming from the feminine side, meaning not just women, but as Arnold Schwarzenegger calls them, the girly men. We have so many men now that have become wimps to the women's side. I keep saying, and I'll keep saying this anyway, as you know, Kenny, how about the women starting to get in touch with their masculine side, the side that has reason and accountability sometimes? And this is not to insult those hundreds of millions of women who aren't this way. This is not all women. It's just too darn big a percentage, which is proven by the polls. You women that don't like hearing it, too bad. It is the truth. And that's what I mean. I don't care how about the feelings. Is it the truth? It is the truth. Why is it all right? And they can't wait to talk on these women's shows and others about the black population. 97% of the black population voted for Obama. And that's a positive. Now, fine. Vote for him because he's black and you're black and you want to give, yeah, you know. But if the white population votes for the white man over the black, we're racist. And you put up with that. And you swallow it. And you can't talk about it. Well, I talk about it. I'm not a racist. But I'm not a doormat. And I'm sick to death of people rolling over for minority positions, which sometimes don't even speak for the majority of their own group. I mentioned this on the radio last Saturday. You know, if you get up in the morning, and I don't care who you are, what you are, male, female, gay, straight, black, white, oriental, if you look in the mirror and you don't like who you are, you don't like your life, and you're angry about it, and you're going to go out and use that to demand change from other people, that's an inside job. And the trouble is the politicians have turned inside and out to go into the minority position to feel good about themselves with your money. It's got to change. It's got to change. Now, the other thing is I had thing here about our other senator. Remember, those of you that thought it was nice to vote for Elizabeth Warren, disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. People who voted for Elizabeth Warren. I'll just tell you that. And you can say whatever you want. I'm looking right in the camera at you. Only 100 people are in the Senate, the United States Senate. Only 100. They are making the key. They are the ultimate power in Congress of decisions over 320 million people. Would you have the custodian of the high school make the decisions out of the principal's office? Now you say, oh, she's a college professor. No. She's not the only one. But it is an absolute disgrace. She can't even handle questions. The Fox interviewer, one of the gals, was trying to interview her on something, and she ran down the hall. She escaped. Another one like Therese Murray. Don't answer anything, you know? And we're supposed to be pro-women when that's how they behave, the two examples we have? How can you in good conscience, when I talk about success, I talk about that poem, Ralph Waldo Emerson, a garden patch. This is how success is, whether by having a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. When are we going to redeem this outrageous voting behavior where we have unions supporting a person just because they're in the tank for their union, not based on what their capabilities and experiences? Remember, Martin Luther King gave his life, like him or not. He would be appalled, I believe, at what has happened in his race. When his comments said he wanted to see people judged not by the color of the skin, but by the content of their character. Have we forgotten that? Yeah, we've forgotten that. The media, the do-gooders, they've hand-wringed. Every time there's a black issue, they go back to slavery. For heaven's sake. We've got schools that, in their estimation, liberal educators, they've forgotten the Pilgrims. They give it a very quick mention. And the first thing, as far as they're concerned, the core of this country begins for them in the 1850s during slavery, when we were a horrible country. That's what kids don't know who Martin Luther was. They know who Martin Luther King is, and that's fine. But they don't know who Martin Luther was. A lot of them couldn't tell you two things about John Carver, for whom the town of Carver is named, and who was the first governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They couldn't tell you about Miles Standish, who saved the 52 remaining colonists when everyone had died from a sickness. They can't tell you about the Revolution, but they can tell you about Rosa Parks and the buses. You understand? This is not race. This is dismay at what has happened with the liberal establishment taking over. Now, this is not to suggest there aren't wonderful teachers teaching history the way it should be. But at the top, I saw this. The administrators now are oriented to political correctness. And if a law gets in the way, they just break the law. We got a president doing that now. He's breaking the Constitution on a regular basis. But when George Bush did something, it was outrage. It was the end of the world if a Republican does something. That's all I keep pointing out to you, is it's part of the need I have to educate. Now, here's one of the things, our second senator, Mr. Markey, who, again, Democrat, hasn't lived in the state for I don't know how many years, has a house in Delaware he spends, he stays in Washington, and just for, the sham of it, he keeps a home in wherever the town was that he, Winthrop or somewhere. He doesn't keep a home, it's an apartment, just for the legality. In the paper the other day, Markey backs rehab law to aid drug crisis. U.S. Senator Edward J. Markey, flanked by national addiction experts, touted a bill signed by Governor Deval Patrick yesterday aimed at the state opiate overdose crisis and pushed for a national discussion. These are the same people, ladies and gentlemen, this country, led by this bunch, nationally, legalized marijuana. Legalized marijuana. You tell me how you can connect the dots there. I believe the soft treatment of drug pushers, those who ship drugs into this country for the last 30 years. I remember when I had the restaurant business down in Hyannis, when cocaine was the in thing. I've never done it, and I'm not saying that but I mean, like Bill Clinton, never inhaled, which was laughable. But again, he was the darling of the press. And Clinton lost my respect then, because anybody that's a college guy, just say, sure, I inhaled it. Does that mean you're not capable of being president? Come on. But it was an in thing. Then all of a sudden now drugs, and this has all become a problem. We all know the tragedy that alcohol has caused, but it's nowhere near what drugs have done. Mostly people with alcohol problems don't beat up their grandmothers and steal her pocketbook. They don't go crazy the way the drug addiction does. But we are so smart and so liberally oriented and fair, and to get it through, they did it by saying it was for medicinal purposes. They're projecting $8.2 billion in revenue the first 2 to 3 years. Are there that many people, do you suppose, that need marijuana medically? It's laughable if it wasn't so tragic. And then on top of that, I mentioned that I was, just so long as you know, am not name dropping, but I was very friendly with Senator Ted Kennedy, and I thought the world of him. He was a good friend. And his young son, Patrick, who went through what a lot of in the family, like a lot of families did, went through drug problems and rehabs. In the back of USA Today last week, in the back, I point this out about priorities today. They have had him on TV, I will say this. But Patrick, who's been clean and sober for quite some time now, married and has a child, says this: as states rush unwisely to legalize marijuana, will this president be remembered for reforming our broken healthcare system or for watching the commercialization of a new legal drug that threatens healthy brain development and the mental health of our children. Because addiction is a disease that starts in adolescence. All you Democrat parents there, remember who you're voting for. Remember who supports this kind of thing. You don't have to like Republicans, but they're not supporting it. I'm not saying all of them. But after all, if you don't start using any drug by age 21, you are unlikely ever to do so. Now we know why big tobacco marketers use cartoons and candy to hook kids. We are seeing the same thing play out in states such as Colorado and Washington. We are expanding health care, including mental health care, to our young people. How can we, in the same breath, be okay with pot legalization? This is Patrick Kennedy, son of the liberal lion. Our country cannot afford another industry that glamorously commercializes addictive drugs and expects the rest of us to pick up the tab for all of the social problems they cause. Now, that couldn't be stated much better. And it comes from a person who experienced drug problems. It comes from a family of liberals. And it's in the back of a newspaper. The back, not the front. So that's why I'm on this show. I want to point these things out. I want you to get mad. Not mad at me, mad at the people that you're electing. They're being fiscally irresponsible almost across the board. They take care of themselves when it comes to their retirement. And this is both parties. Again, please stop the party politics. Start looking at what each and every one of us can do to, when we leave the planet, know that we left it a little better than when we got here. That our life mattered to somebody. That we did. You don't have to make $1 million. You don't have to be a public success. How are you with your kids? I remember another quote that was kind of quickly dismissed. Jacqueline Kennedy, who I knew a little bit, who was a wonderful lady. And she was quoted one time in an article that, and I'm paraphrasing it, but I'm pretty near close. She said, in an answer to the question asked, she said, when you've messed up bringing up your children, nothing else you do really matters. Now, how can that be any more succinct? But it's not popular with the media, who wants chaos. Remember this, they don't want us to get along. Never have. They want chaos. They want... I laugh when I hear these liberals, complaining about the divisiveness. Well, of course there's divisiveness. Read the papers. Watch television. Do we really have to sit at the news channels and watch a young person that was abducted in Upper Saskatchewan, Canada, to frighten mothers about their child being... I mean, there are millions, in just this country, 320-odd million people now. You're going to have more problems. But the news feeds on it because the audience feeds on it. And I know I can't change it, but at least I can call attention to it. I don't feel a bit... We haven't had any calls, and that's fine. I'd like to think we have people watching. I'd like to think that if I do nothing else with this show, I convey my experience and my knowledge and my concerns to those who maybe don't hear any kind of a voice. It's not ego. It has nothing to do with it. But I feel my radio show, again, love to have you listen on Saturdays at 95.1 FM on Cape Cod, 11 to 1. We have a lot of Plymouth people who listen and call. And hopefully you'll tell your friends, and hopefully we can get some participation. At least you can't say you don't have an opportunity to vent. That's what we want to do, vent, right? Kenny, we want to have more people.
Want to have more people, but I always go back to what we heard about a lot back in the 60s and 70s, and that was the silent majority.
Yes.
You have a lot of people watching this show.
Yep.
They don't want to walk over and pick up the phone because they either agree with you or they're too involved in what it is you're saying.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That's the way radio is, too. For all the listeners we have, all talk radio has a minimal of those who participate. And they vicariously participate, though, when someone does call. That's why I encourage.
Generally, when somebody breaks the ice, that's when somebody else will get up and walk over and pick up the phone. But there are a lot of people that are involved. They're watching. They're just paying such close attention. You'll start to notice that in your travels around town. They're really paying attention.
Oh, as I said to you, you know, I'm not evaluating what we're doing by the amount of people participating, because we are both committed to doing what I already said, and that is hopefully making some sense, making those of you, or helping those of you to realize that if you think like I do, or at least are open-minded enough to know someone is going on the airwaves, both radio and now television, trying to reach out to those that are in the areas where they can matter. And the other thing, ladies and gentlemen, that I say is, it doesn't do any good if you just believe something, you hear something any of us have to say, if you don't pass it on. It's so absolutely essential for us to pass this on to our children who are bombarded, as I started the show, bombarded with this idea of being a failure if they're not a college grad in the stock market or in the banking business. I'm at the age now where I have friends that are passing away, and I've had, unfortunately, too many of them tell me that they wish they'd done something else. They weren't unhappy, but they felt as though they wished they'd have taken a chance and done something else, but they didn't like their job that much. So don't be one of those, and I hope you'll convey to your kids, as I've tried to my kids, and that is, I want you to be happy with what you're doing. That doesn't mean to take the easy way out, but it does mean to choose something that you believe you can enjoy. You know, to thine own self be true. And those that don't, you know, I believe have less of a life of enjoyment. We're all supposed to really be, you know, happy. It is happy. It sounds corny, but so we'll put this one in the can. And as I say, once again, you can catch us on Monday at 11 p.m., Tuesday at 9 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 p.m. I hope you'll write that on your calendar. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Don McKeag, and we'll hopefully see you next Thursday at 6 o'clock. God bless. Thank you, Kenny, for all you do in the production. And thanks to those that I have run into who have commented that they enjoyed the show.